Have you ever just stopped and wondered if the world around you is actually real? It sounds like science fiction, but it's a profound question being seriously debated right now across science, philosophy, and even faith. Is our reality really what it seems to be?
All right, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the seriously strange clues coming from quantum physics. Then, we'll dive into the logical arguments that suggest we might be in a simulation. After that, we'll hit a surprising twist coming from evolutionary biology. And finally, we'll get into the major critiques of this entire mind-bending idea.
So where do we even begin with a question this big? Well, it turns out the first real cracks in our solid, stable sense of the world started to appear in a very specific place: quantum physics.
You know, for all the things we think we know for sure, our most successful, most tested scientific theory tells us that the very foundation of reality is, well, it's bizarre. It's far stranger than any of us can truly wrap our heads around.
All right, so get this. At the tiniest, most fundamental level, the building blocks of everything aren't like little solid marbles. Nope. Instead, they exist as a smear of possibilities, a cloud of probabilities, existing in many potential places all at once.
And if you thought that was weird, hold on. That whole cloud of possibilities only collapses into one single definite thing in one single place when we look at it, when we observe it. This is the famous measurement problem, and it's a huge deal. It kind of suggests that reality is a bit shy. It doesn't even bother to solidify until we demand that it does.
This mind-bending weirdness led the brilliant physicist John Wheeler to come up with a truly radical idea he called it from bit. The concept is pretty much what it sounds like, that every physical thing in the universe ultimately springs from information, from bits, from simple yes or no choices, just like the binary logic that runs a computer.
So let's just pause and think about what this all means. If matter is just a vibration, if space and time aren't even fundamental, and if the whole universe acts more like a giant hard drive than a box full of stuff, well, then maybe our entire framework for reality is just an interface, an illusion, which of course leads us directly to our next big idea.
So you have all this weirdness bubbling up from physics. The next logical step? Well, philosophers took these ideas and formalized them into a seriously powerful argument.
And look, this isn't just the Matrix. This is way more than a cool sci-fi concept. The simulation hypothesis is a serious metaphysical proposal, and it's backed by a really clever, structured argument.
So back in 2003, a philosopher named Nick Bostrom laid out this incredible logical puzzle. He called it a trilemma. And he basically said, look, one of these three things is almost certainly true. 1. Civilizations always wipe themselves out before they can build super powerful simulations. 2. They get that advanced, but for whatever reason, they're just not interested in simulating their ancestors. Or 3. We are almost certainly living inside one of those simulations right now.
The whole argument really just boils down to simple probability. Think about it. If even one civilization anywhere ever creates countless ancestor simulations, then the number of simulated realities would vastly, vastly outnumber the one base reality. So statistically speaking, what are the odds? Are you more likely to be in that single original universe or in one of the billions upon billions of simulated ones? Okay, so we've got physics and philosophy both pointing in this strange direction. But here's the kicker. A completely separate field, evolutionary biology, actually arrives at a very similar conclusion, but from a totally different path. The core idea here is that evolution, well, it doesn't really care about the truth. Natural selection is tuned for one thing and one thing only: fitness. That means survival and reproduction. I mean, an animal that wastes energy trying to perceive the deep objective reality of a predator is going to get eaten. The one that just sees a simple danger signal and runs, that's the one that passes on its genes. And this is just a brilliant analogy. Our senses might function just like the desktop on your computer. You don't see the circuits and the code and the electricity. You see simple icons. You click the file icon to open it. You're not interacting with the deep reality of the machine. You're using a simplified interface. Maybe we just see a snake icon and react without ever needing to process the complex physics of what a snake truly is. It's about efficiency, not accuracy. Okay, it's a pretty compelling case, right? But as you can imagine, not everyone is buying it. These ideas get a ton of pushback, and it comes from two very different camps: science and faith.
And the objections could not be more different. On one side, you have scientists challenging the logic and the scientific validity of the whole thing, and on the other side, you have faith-based critics challenging its entire spiritual purpose.
So from the scientific community, the critiques are sharp. They point to huge logical problems, like the infinite regress issue. If we're in a simulation, who simulates the simulators? And are they in a simulation? Then there's the practical impossibility of it all. But maybe the biggest knock is that the hypothesis is unfalsifiable. There's no experiment you can run to prove it wrong. And for many scientists, if you can't test it, it's not really science.
Now, let's switch gears completely. From a faith-based perspective, like one presented in our sources, this isn't just a flawed idea. It's seen as a deliberate spiritual deception, one designed by Lucifer to undermine belief.
This perspective reframes the whole debate as a spiritual battle. It argues that the ultimate reality and truth are found not in physics, but in the Bible. And if the universe does run on code, the ultimate programmer is God, not some unknown simulator.
So, where does that leave us? We've got this fascinating puzzle with pieces from wildly different places: physics, philosophy, biology, faith, and they all seem to be pointing to the very unsettling conclusion that our world may not be what it appears.
You know, the key takeaway here might not be about finding a definitive answer, but about understanding why this is such a powerful and persistent question in the first place.
So, is our reality a quantum computation, a philosophical probability, a survival interface, or a divine creation? Ultimately, the real question isn't whether our reality is real or not, but what the fundamental nature of that reality truly is. And that's the question we'll leave with you.